So let's start off with these petroleum subsidies, the fact that there's a petroleum industry bill that must be promulgated by government, and that basically the federal government has a vision to remove the subsidy. So why are you wanting them to preempt this?
I don't think that the Governors Forum is preempting the process of removing the subsidy. I rather know that it is already in the burner, even before the election. I think what happened was that politicians tried to avoid it at that point and decided to proceed with the election. At the end of election, the success of the economy and the growth of the economy will greatly be influenced by what action we take as it pertains to subsidies. And that's why the Governors Forum have recommended to the President to kindly ensure that the subsidy is removed.
All right. Now, what is the argument coming from the Governors Forum? If you remove petroleum subsidies, it makes it easier to handle the minimum wage of 18,000 naira?
Well, it helps. Well, it's not sustainable, but it helps. It helps in the sense that it brings more money into the till for everybody to share or distribute, and that will then enhance the capacity of the governors to be able to pay the 18,000 minimum wage.
I mean, you mentioned the word sustainable, and I think that's what's concerning people here, is if you tap into that estimated 500 billion naira, you may be able to come up with a disbursement program for the next few years, but ultimately you've got to come up with another way as individual states.
Yeah, we're not saying that that will be the permanent solution to the payment of the wages. What we have said is that will help alleviate the problem. That's one. Then two, we've also talked about the allocation formula, that there is need to share to improve on the allocation formula, giving the state more money to be able to handle the increase in wages. So it's not just only about the removal of subsidy, it's also about the change or review of the revenue sharing formula.
Can you elaborate on that? Because we do know that there are federal allocations in the budget each year. There's money that goes to the national government. Then there's a formula of distributing revenue to the second tier of government and then local government. So ultimately, states do get money from the fiscus.
Yeah, we do. We do get money, but currently the federal government is taking the lion's share of 52%, and all the states put together are taking 26%, 26-point-something%. The remaining goes to the local government areas. We think that it should be reviewed upwards for the states. The states should be allowed to receive 40%, while the federal government should receive something lower than that. We think if that happens, if there's a review in the sharing formula where the states are taking more money, then the state will be able to discharge its own social responsibilities to the benefit of both workers and the citizens.
Why can't states raise their own capital? Because there is that provision within the law. There are bonds that you can issue on the capital markets. I know about 4 states have government bonds. There are taxes you can charge at a local government level. And I know many of the states also have their own private investment drives trying to draw foreign direct investment. So it's a question of innovation.
No, I don't think it's just mere innovation alone. I think it goes beyond that. I think that, yes, you've talked about bond, but the bond is not sustainable. For how long will the states continue to fund the budget on a deficit budget? That won't be proper all the time. You've talked about taxes. Yes, we all think that we should review our tax regime and ensure that people pay for what services that the state is able to provide. But again, you will know that currently not too many people pay taxes in the country, especially when it comes to the informal sector. So we think that while we are pursuing tax regime, while we are pursuing, very few states can actually sustain bond. And when you talk about taxes, there are about Lagos State, maybe Rivers State, maybe Delta, and some few states where you can have the internal generated revenue, not maybe being able to sustain the salary. So you still need to look at the revenue sharing formula, and you still need to look at the subsidy. And people are not talking about the benefits of the states. I mean, benefits that the citizens will derive from this removal of subsidy. Our argument is how many citizens of Nigeria are benefiting from the removal of the subsidy? Very few. There are very few states where the subsidy regime is taking place. Maybe Lagos, maybe Rivers. And when you say Rivers, probably Port Harcourt, and then Abuja. The rest parts of this country, you have where people are paying 100 and something naira for a liter of petrol, when actually petrol subsidy is supposed to be about 65 naira, and some states are selling at 100 and something naira. So very few individuals are benefiting from it.
Help us understand also how this federal system works, Governor, to the extent, for instance, where the federal government at a national level has identified key priorities, education, for instance, infrastructure, investment, energy. The problem is whether or not those goals translate at a local or a state government level. And this is where I think the disconnect comes in, is the federal government has to be able to ensure that its priorities are followed through at a state level and that resources are accounted for. Because we do know, once we talk about Nigeria, we're talking about systemic problems that lead to poor service delivery and also to corruption. And if the federal government's taking the lion's share, that's probably them ring-fencing their priorities and trying to ensure that they limit rot in the system.
Another thing that, which is the argument the governors are making, that some of the responsibilities that the federal government engage themselves in can be devolved downwards to the states. For instance, the federal government cannot claim to own any land. Certainly. So what is federal government doing about agriculture? They could make policy, regulate the policy, and ensure that there's a framework for agricultural business in Nigeria. But the states own land. So funds coming from agriculture should be reviewed to be given to the states. That is one. Education. I think that the states are in a position to handle primary education and secondary education. So the federal government has no business investing in primary and secondary education. There are actually issues that we are going to discuss with the federal government when we begin to talk about the issue of revenue sharing formula. And when we do that, then maybe there will be constitutional amendments. Or if there is none, where we have concurrent responsibilities, we would ask the federal government to review the revenue in such a manner that the states benefit from it, while allowing the state to discharge such functions like agriculture, like probably even water, even education, in terms of primary and secondary education, while we share the responsibility of tertiary education with the federal government. And this issue of corruption, you must look at the point that some states receive about 2 billion, and 2 billion naira. When you talk about 2 billion naira, you talk about $100 and something million. And then they have revenue, they have salary to pay, which also amounts to nearly that same amount of money. So how are you going to handle that?